Imagine receiving an invitation from the French government. The letter looks authentic, the stamps are real, the signatures appear legitimate. You are told that you have been selected for a confidential meeting involving one of the most important landmarks in the world. Then, during that meeting, a government official reveals a shocking secret. France is planning to dismantle the Eiffel Tower, and it will be sold as scrap metal. You realize the potential profit is enormous. Millions could be made. You rush to secure the deal before anyone else. You hand over a fortune. Then, a few days later, you discover a horrifying truth. The French government never planned to sell the Eiffel Tower. The official was not an official at all. You have just been scammed by a man who became one of the greatest con artists in history. A man so skilled at deception that he managed to sell the Eiffel Tower. Not once, but twice. This is the unbelievable story of Victor Lustig, the man who fooled the world. Victor Lustig was born in 1890 in what is now the Czech Republic. From an early age, he showed remarkable intelligence. He was charming, well-spoken, and possessed an unusual ability to read people. While others studied books, Lustig studied human behavior. He learned something that would shape the rest of his life. People rarely believe what is true. They believe what they want to be true. That insight became the foundation of his career. By the time he reached adulthood, Lustig had already become a professional swindler. He traveled across Europe, targeting wealthy businessmen, aristocrats, and investors. Unlike common criminals, he never relied on violence. His weapon was persuasion. He understood greed, ego, fear, and ambition. He knew exactly which emotions to exploit. Over time, he became famous in criminal circles for his confidence tricks. But his greatest masterpiece was still ahead. In 1925, Paris was one of the most glamorous cities on Earth. Millions admired the Eiffel Tower. Today, it is difficult to imagine Paris without it. But at the time, the tower faced criticism. Maintenance costs were enormous. Newspapers regularly discussed whether the aging structure should be demolished. Most people ignored these articles. Victor Lustig saw an opportunity. He carefully studied the public debate. Then he devised a plan so audacious that it sounded impossible, which is exactly why it worked. Lustig forged official government documents. He created fake credentials. He rented a luxurious suite in one of Paris's most prestigious hotels. Then he invited several major scrap metal dealers to a secret meeting. The businessmen arrived expecting government business. Everything appeared legitimate. The location, the paperwork, the presentation, even Lustig's behavior. He introduced himself as a high-ranking government official. Then he delivered astonishing news. The Eiffel Tower was becoming too expensive to maintain. The government had secretly decided to dismantle it. Because the matter was politically sensitive, the sale would be conducted confidentially. The dealers were stunned. Before them stood the opportunity of a lifetime. The amount of scrap metal alone could generate enormous profits. Competition immediately intensified. Every dealer wanted the contract. Lustig watched carefully. He wasn't looking for the richest businessman. He was looking for the most desperate, the one most eager to believe. Eventually, he found his target, a scrap dealer named André Poisson. Poisson desperately wanted to establish himself among Paris's business elite. Lustig recognized the insecurity instantly. Then he added another layer to the deception. He hinted that government officials often expected personal payments to approve deals. In other words, a bribe. Poisson interpreted this as a normal part of doing business. Wanting desperately to secure the contract, he paid a huge amount of money, along with an additional bribe. The moment the payment was delivered, Victor Lustig disappeared. By the time Poisson realized the truth, the con artist was gone. The Eiffel Tower remained exactly where it had always been. But here's the incredible part. The victim was so embarrassed that he refused to report the crime. Imagine explaining to the police that you had purchased the Eiffel Tower. Poisson feared public humiliation. So he remained silent. When Lustig discovered this, he couldn't believe his luck. Most criminals would disappear forever. Victor Lustig decided to do something almost unimaginable. He returned to Paris and attempted the exact same scam again, selling the Eiffel Tower for a second time. This time, however, one of the targets became suspicious and contacted authorities. Lustig fled before he could be arrested. Yet somehow, he escaped once again. His legend continued to grow. By now, Victor Lustig had become an international criminal celebrity. He traveled constantly, using dozens of fake identities, speaking multiple languages, crossing borders with ease. Authorities struggled to keep up. Then he moved his operations to the United States. And that's where things became even bigger. During the Great Depression, millions of Americans were desperate. Banks were failing. Savings disappeared overnight. People wanted hope, and Victor Lustig understood exactly how to sell it. One of his most famous tricks involved a mysterious device known as the money box. Lustig claimed it could duplicate banknotes. He would place a genuine bill inside the machine, then dramatically reveal another bill emerging from the other side. Potential victims were amazed. What they didn't know was that the machine secretly contained a few genuine bills hidden inside. The trick worked perfectly. Investors paid enormous sums to purchase the device. After several hours, the machine stopped producing money. By then, Lustig was already gone. The victims had been fooled again. Yet despite countless scams, one mistake would eventually bring him down. In the 1930s, Lustig became involved in large-scale counterfeiting operations. This was different from his earlier cons. Now he was directly threatening the American financial system. His organization produced extraordinarily convincing counterfeit currency, so convincing that federal authorities became alarmed. The United States Secret Service launched an intensive investigation. Agents tracked his movements, followed leads across multiple states, interviewed informants, built a growing case. Eventually, one of his associates betrayed him. In 1935, Victor Lustig was arrested. For the first time in decades, the master con artist had nowhere left to run. His trial attracted enormous attention. Newspapers across America covered every detail. People were fascinated. How had one man fooled so many intelligent individuals? How had he managed to evade capture for so long? The answer was simple. He understood human nature, perhaps better than his victims understood themselves. In court, the evidence was overwhelming. Lustig was convicted. The sentence was severe. He was sent to the infamous prison of Alcatraz, the prison reserved for America's most dangerous criminals. For a man who had spent his life escaping consequences, it was the ultimate defeat. Victor Lustig died in prison in 1947. But his story never disappeared. Because unlike most criminals, he didn't rely on force. He relied on psychology. His greatest weapon wasn't a gun. It was understanding exactly what people wanted to hear. The dream of easy money, the desire for status, the fear of missing out, the belief that they were smarter than everyone else. Those weaknesses existed in 1925. They existed during the Great Depression, and they still exist today. That is why the story of Victor Lustig remains relevant nearly a century later. Because technology changes, markets change, governments change. But human nature rarely does. And as long as people continue chasing opportunities that seem too good to be true, there will always be someone ready to sell them their own version of the Eiffel Tower. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next story about history's greatest scams, masterminds, and unbelievable true events. And tell us in the comments, would you have fallen for Victor Lustig's Eiffel Tower scam? Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.